It is true that innovation and creativity has been the biggest driver of transformation of our banking industry. And Equity Bank eventually became the leader of the technology and innovation frontier. And the first one that we became a global first was the mobile or cell phone mapped bank account, whereby delivery moved from the branches, moved away from the ATMs and other electronic to delivery through the cell phone. That alone brought so much convenience and ease of banking, in the sense that distance was completely bridged. The bank was in everybody's pockets. The bank was in everybody's hearts. It was not the 70 kilometers where the branch used to previously to be. The second innovation, again using technology, was bridging access to the last mile, where we said banking is expensive, not because the charges are high, but the cost of accessing the bank itself, the public transport, the time it requires is what creates the exorbitant cost of access. And we said, what about if we converted shopkeepers into agents of the bank, and you have the basic transactions of withdrawals, deposits being done at by the village shopkeeper, and creating agency, again another number one for equity in the world, again fully made banking very, very accessible. And lastly, it is the paperless banking, where you said the blue and pink deposit and withdraw papers were a huge inhibition, because it meant the illiterate people had to look for somebody to fill this, and removing them from the banking hall, and particularly also getting the image of a person captured by our IT system without having to come with a passport size photograph. Again, that truly opened and removed the humiliation and the indignity of exposing people's literacy level in the banking hall and making them really vulnerable to others. So I would say those three aspects in terms of innovations were very, very strong. It is true that there's been a dramatic change in the behavior of the banks, and we have seen the banks becoming what you could call responsible citizens, and acknowledging that they exist on a public license. And banks seems to have realized that they need to be part and parcel and catalyst of the transformation, that they are privileged and uniquely positioned to be the driver of transformation, as opposed to adapting to a transformation driven by the others. They have also realized it makes business sense to invest in society to make it a better society as a banking population, helping to really I think banks also have come to the realization that while it looks easy to deal with the internal environment, looking at what are my strengths and what are weaknesses, it will be more prudent to deal with the external environment and deal with the opportunities and threats from a market perspective. And that is why you see banks. It is true banks are spending more than $1 billion. Equity Bank is spending on its own more than $1 billion shillings every year. In the next 1 year, we'll be completing a program that we are training 1 million people on a 11-week financial literacy training program, realizing population coming from peasantry setup to a fully monetarized economy needs to be transited with knowledge on financial literacy. That alone is costing more than $15 million. We have opted to educate 10,000 needy but gifted children in society, 25 for every district. Again, realizing that we need to be investing in that population so as to make it more bankable and maybe a better bank. If you look at transformation of agriculture, Equity has set itself, and over the last 10 years, we have transformed 460,000 peasant farmers into small-scale commercial farmers or agribusinesses. And when you transform them, they become better clients. So it's literally creating the client for yourself. So I would not call it social corporate responsibility. I would call it impact investing, social investing, and literally making good business. So I would say doing good makes banks do better. As Equity became successful, we realized there were 3 areas that we could significantly contribute into. The first one, we saw the challenge of leadership in this country. And when we did a deep dive on leadership, we realized there was a natural selection method whereby the best positioned at a tender age went to the best school, tended to be to have a head start in becoming the leaders of the next generation. Then we said, okay, what we'll do is to pick the best girl and the best boy in every district. We are now picking 300 every year. Give them an internship where we coach and mentor them on leadership. Then avail them opportunities to the best university. And over the last 3 years, we have 92, with 14 of them being in Harvard University. Give them the best elite education in the hope that when the time comes to nationally become the leaders, we will have a very different class of leadership, globally exposed, globally networked, given the best knowledge, and in a critical number that they can, as a generation, choose to change the quality and kind of leadership that we see in this country. Then we realize suddenly that they are very gifted kids, but from very needy, poor families, orphans, who are never able to transit from the free primary education to, and then we said, why don't we then have a massive program of lifting those ones through the secondary education so that they can also become beneficiaries of the university. And we allocated with our partners. We sought partnership from MasterCard Foundation, DFID, USID. We created a program where every district is allocated 25 spaces or 25 scholarships. And today, 10,000 kids, with the majority of them being in the elite schools in this country, the alliances of this world, the Mangus, the Moi girls, hosting those kids. And essentially, we have now seen those kids are now topping in. So we have given an opportunity where it was evasive and had. So we are seeing is that an opportunity in the future that there will be equal opportunity of a leader to come from the high class, middle class, all the bottom of the pyramid. And when you do it en masse, 10,000, almost every village in the country benefiting to position a gifted but disadvantaged kid, then we are seeing as if we have stirred the society, bridging the gap between the rich and the poor by building opportunities. My background might be a little bit relevant, that informed my first experience in banking. And here I was brought up in a very humble family in a rural area, a beneficiary of what we used to call bursaries. Coming to Nairobi for the first time when I was coming to Nairobi University and quickly finishing university and given a job by today Ernst & Young. And my first assignment was to the bank. My account at that time for payroll was in post office, so I had never had an experience with a bank. And then suddenly when I stepped in the bank, I'm amazed that it appears I don't fit there, I don't belong there. You look at the people in the bank and you see they are very different from you, from the way they dress, from the floors of the banking. You know, it was really more of a crab sort of mindset that comes. And then suddenly, after 3 years of auditing, I'm pushed by one of the banks. And then I have internal data, and then I saw nobody in my village nobody in the locality that was brought in would ever have a bank account. The conditions that had been put, and that was the shock for me. And that is when the opportunity came to lead Turn Loud at the Indigenous Bank and make it serve the people. And my benchmark was, can my mother be able to have a bank account? Can the neighbors at home, can the boys that we played with as we grew up be able to have a bank account? If myself could not have a bank account and I had to be in post office, I wondered whether anybody, and that is where I said, and that inspired me to think about democratizing and making banking relevant to my people. And that is the call that I still answer today. Make banking change lives and livelihoods of our people, because I have appreciated the power that banks has. If you look at independence, banks allocated resources through credit to those who could, and they set up factories in the industrial area. And since the majority of us as Kenyans were not given resources, we became providers of labor to the same industries. But you can see today, with access to credit of the majority of the Kenyans, then you can see industrial area is changing faces. You can see now it's no longer a preserve of some people. And you can see it's not just providing labor, we can now own. It's not just about facilitating, but we can create wealth for our own. And nation will never develop unless it's able to create wealth for its own people. My going into the banking was very unique in the sense that while working for an international bank, Equity Building Society that had been started by people from my village was condemned as technically insolvent and requested to close. And the only person, those in leadership who knew, was very well trained in banking, and they said, can you intercede for us? Can you be our change agent? Can you be our strategist to transform this instead of closing? Can you come and do a Turn Loud? That was my experience. And the first thing was the shock when I came from an international bank, and then I went to a bank that had a building society that had been in existence for 11 years, but had built a loss of 33 million shillings against a capital of 3 million, technically insolvent. Deposits was only 21 million shillings, and loans were only 9 million. That was the first shocking news. The fact that they had not done audit for 3 years. So I went into Equity emotionally, answering to a request from our friends, only to be confronted with the stark reality that this was a very tiny, technically insolvent institution. And so my first experience was Turn Loud. Change the business model, change the vision, and then train and develop your staff and create a brand. And I'm glad. If there is the best decision I ever made, at that time it looked the worst decision because it was like jumping from the furnace to the fire directly. Looking back, I would say it enabled me to serve my community, and it helped me turn a whole industry to be relevant to our people.